I don't think they've improved since getting rid of Justin Holbrook.
No.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, we're in a results-driven game.
This one is going to be an absolute bell ringer, I think. To have a logical place in the competition, I think you're going to get everybody that's a rugby league fan interested in giving their comment and giving them full support.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of Queenslander, brought to you with special thanks from Tab as we gear up for an extra special week here in Brisbane hosting our Magic Round. But first of all, Wally, it's been a big couple of days for you too. You got married on the weekend. Congratulations.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, it's a wonderful day. Had plenty of friends around and it was great. Probably imperative that I put in, I am a very lucky man. I've done extremely well. So.
Yeah, your beautiful bride, Linda, looked magnificent. Fatty was there. Any Fatty speeches?
There are a couple of head wobbles going on from Fatty as I first gained contact with him, so it's interesting. But no, I didn't get to have the fat speeches, just the one-on-one conversations that were, as usual, high-value entertainment.
It was probably a good thing that Fatty didn't do a speech.
Well, he would have probably asked to be paid for it.
Yeah. I think he probably would have said, "What are you doing marrying this bloke for? Fair dinkum, have a look at him. No hair on top, and he's a dud in every sense of the word," as Fatty would put it. But yeah, just a happy man. Thanks for that, Adam. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Big smile on the face.
Was there many of your, I guess, mates that come from a long way back in terms like Fatty? I mean, Fatty, you would have known since how old?
Yeah, Fatty, I've played against him since we were under 13s, 12s and 13s, and I think I've told the story before with the representative games. He used to get picked at lock forward. We both played lock forward. He'd get it one time in the Brisbane underage teams as lock, and I'd be picked in the second row. Next year I'd be picked at lock. He was in the second row. But he always used to tell me that he was the one that was responsible for Queensland's success. I only got extra consideration because I was the captain of the team. So, yeah, but he's been a long-term mate, as has Gene Miles has. And Gino got to be able to bring the ring forward, of course, and hand things on. So I was a little bit nervous that there was going to be some trick playing take place, but thankfully it didn't.
I'm just going to, I know we're going to get to this, but Al Graham was there too. He's the manager of Suncorp Stadium.
Yep.
And the surface of Suncorp's been a big talking point. Was that on the agenda?
Yeah, he said in reply, "Mate, I'll talk to you about anything else except the ground." He said, "We're here to have a good time, not be controversial." So he was that, but I think he's in full realisation that there is a little bit of an issue there at the moment.
Yeah, well, we might as well tackle that issue. Suncorp Stadium, they've relayed about half the turf on the field. Is that a concern, Lockie, leading up to what's 4 big days of footy?
Look, I've seen it before where they've had concerts at Suncorp and they've relayed the turf, and I thought, will the ball bounce? You assume if you're just laying the turf in the backyard, you put it down, it's not going to be very, set and have any spring in it. But the couple of times I've seen turf being relayed there and played a game on there 7 days after, I was pleasantly surprised how good it gets.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen any drama take place after the returfing of the ground. They're a professional outfit and they seem to do it extremely well. And I don't think there'll be any players claiming that it's the surface that cost them a great performance on the weekend. Yeah,
Matty Oliver's the head groundskeeper there. He does a phenomenal job. We see it when we do the Wide World Sports game. Like 15 minutes after the game, they're on the field with the moles. I think they had you on the mole a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so they, obviously stressful time for them because Magic Round is, there's a lot of people watching, and got the Broncos playing, you got the Reds on there, you got the Raw, and you got a lot of rain. The sun's starting to set on the north, so that end doesn't get any good. So it's just all these things that are working against him, but. He's at the end of the day, he's done the best he could. But the new turf comes in, and I reckon by the time we get to Thursday night with the women, I reckon it'll be looking good.
Yeah, I just think the issue is they play too many games at Suncorp Stadium now. Like the Brisbane Roar, the A-League season's continuing. even some of the Reds games, we need to find an avenue. I know it's not an NRL stadium, it's a Queensland government stadium, but with the advent of the Dolphins, it wasn't really thought through enough how much extra traffic is there, plus the rain that it's occurred. And in future, I don't think we should play any games the week before Magic Round. Like, give it a week off if possible.
Yep.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, I know, with the scheduling. But it was bizarre, yeah. Like you said, it rained. We had the Broncos play the Bulldogs, the Reds on Anzac Day, and the Roar, like 3 games a week before in the rain. That's the struggles. It's not the fault of the Suncorp Stadium ground staff. The weather's been conspiring against them. And the draw. But the big positive of Magic Round, Lockie, everyone started to copy it. The AFL, the A-League's done it. Like, you could just feel a buzz around the city at the moment with Magic Round. Well,
it's an event that brings money into the local economy. So it's, a bit like what Super Bowl does in America.
Yep.
I think we got the Magic Round concept off
Super League. Yeah.
So, but it's become this beast, and some people go, well, should we really copy what they're doing? But if it works,
that's it.
Yeah, even for the games where they're supposedly an away game, but they're actually playing it at Suncorp because of the Magic Round coming around. So it's a fantastic opportunity, and I think everyone is excited by it. Even the opposition players, the Sydney-based guys, Melbourne guys, and the Kiwis say that it's a thrill to play there. They can understand how people get very excited to play at Suncorp.
And you mentioned there, while the anomalies in the draw, so the Broncos and the Dolphins are actually the away teams this week. How beneficial is that for them to play an away game at Suncorp Stadium?
Yeah, enormously. It's a huge benefit to have that as an away game. But again, I still think that just about every team on show gets excited to play at Suncorp. They all know that they're playing out in the middle of an atmosphere. Not a lot of the fans are always with or in support of that particular team. Say it was the Kiwis, but I do remember the last time we had the games at Suncorp, and there was an argument that there was actually more Kiwis at the ground than there was Australians.
Yeah.
So they certainly aren't going to be short of support.
Well, what I love about it, which is unique, other than the vibe that it brings to the city and the energy it brings to Suncorp, is just all the different jerseys that are outside the stadium or sitting in the stadium, and so you get this, just league tragics that are their team might not be playing, but they're there enjoying themselves, having a few beers, and some of those, by the third game on Saturday, some of them are really travelling.
I heard someone on Twitter referred to it as schoolies for dads, which is probably, if you go there Sunday night, you probably get that example.
I reckon there's probably a few mums there as well.
Yeah, well, definitely, yeah. And it is a public holiday in Queensland on Monday, so crowds will be definitely staying right till the end. I think the Storm finished it off against the Raiders, so 2 top 4 teams at the moment. But another big game, Lockie, Sunday afternoon, the Broncos against the Panthers, another rematch of that famous 2023 grand final. You think if Brisbane win this could go a long way to going close to extinguishing the Panthers' finals hopes? It almost makes it very, very difficult.
Well, you throw in Origin too.
Yeah,
so,
you lose Cleary for a while.
And maybe Edwards,
Yep.
In the past they've come to Origin sitting near the top of the table and rested their players.
Exactly.
So the mountain just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I know the Panthers are going to come here. They've won 4 grand finals, been in the last 5, won 4 in a row. Nathan Cleary, the best player in the game, still there. Isaiah, so this is still if you look at the 2 teams on paper, like there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
And I would assume the hunger that Panthers are going to show, it'll be a tough ask for the Bronx.
Yeah, definitely a circle, fixed to a circle on the calendar, the Broncos against the Panthers. I was doing the math before, so Panthers have won 2 of 8 games. So you essentially need to win 13 games to get into the finals, maybe 12. So out of the 13 out of 24. So if they lose to the Broncos this weekend, they'll have to win 11 of their remaining 15 games.
So in 99, we won the GF's 97-98. In 99, out of the first 10 games, we won 1. And we won the next 13 in a row.
Yeah.
We fell into the finals at 8th, and that was is it the McIntyre system? Basically, so we played Cronulla week 1, which they finished first in Cronulla, and we got beaten. convincingly. So it can be done, but
takes a toll.
Whatever energy you burn getting there, it's going to be hard to go any further. But look, like I said, they couldn't win last year, and they did. So never write them off.
That's it. Changing tone now. Let's head all the way over to Perth. Big news over the weekend with the Bears coming back into the competition to be based out of Perth. In 2027 they came in. Do you think this was a logical choice?
Pretty much so. I'm sure you've heard me say it and whinge about it a couple of times, Adam, but they should never have been kicked out of the competition.
Yeah.
They were one of the original teams back in, was it 1908 or...
North Sydney Bears. That's what I forgot to say. Yeah.
So now it's one of those occasions, but this one is going to be an absolute bell ringer, I think. To have a logical place in the competition, I think you're going to get everybody that's a rugby league fan interested in giving their comment and giving them full support.
Yeah, it ticks a lot of boxes. I mean, it gives the Perth franchise a leg up because of the Sydney following and the history. Like, I think I've always, like you just said, reinstating the history of the Bears into the game was really important, and they've been given an opportunity to do that in Perth. And so that brings some Sydney followers into that franchise, and then they'll grow their own homegrown fans over there. And when I think there's unfinished business in Perth for rugby league. So I guess the Super League war did a fair bit of damage across the game, and unfortunately the Western Reds were they were the ones that have suffered from that, and so they're back as the Bears with all that history, and as we've seen with the Dolphins, you got to get it right from the start to build, and that's important. And same with PNG, they'll have to make sure, and the Bears got a year less than PNG. Yeah,
and 2027, so essentially the same time as the Dolphins had, but the Dolphins were more established.
Yeah, and the Dolphins were on the eastern seaboard. Yeah. They're on the west.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, they say that it's too far on the other side of the country. Personally, I think it can be uncomfortable, but it's an outstanding promotion for rugby league, and to provide them once again to see them in the competition. It's fantastic. It's common sense for the NRL, and certainly have a look at the way that Aussie Rules got in to spread their fame and name around the country. It was an outstanding promotion from them.
Well, those clubs that are over in the AFL, they'd have to travel all the time.
Yeah, they do.
There's a few premierships there at the West Coast Eagles. I think the more people watching our game, the more it's going to grow, and so the more places we're playing our game, the benefit is going to come back. And so that's the opportunity. AFL has expanded into rugby league territory. So it's our turn. We're financially in a good position. It's now our turn to do the same. Yeah,
there's a great interest in rugby league in WA. My youngest brother, he went and played over in West Australia and loved it, and found that there was a whole pile of East Coasters that were over there working in the mines close by, and certainly a lot of Kiwis as well. The New Zealanders loved the opportunity, so it's something I think the fuse is waiting to be lit.
Yep. And it helps with the time zone too, with that essentially 2-hour time zone difference. You'll see a lot of the 6 o'clock Sunday game, which will be 4 o'clock in Perth, so it'll vice versa help. You know who was the happiest man about this? I saw him at Suncorp Stadium the other day, Billy Moore. Billy Moore can't stop smiling. He's on the board. He's been pivotal in these negotiations, and it's great to see his passion too.
Yeah, and there's a lot, Gary Larson, Greg Florimo has been really passionate about this. So
even Les Kiss as well, the Reds coach.
So, he's the Wallaby.
Depending on timing of announcement when you're watching this, but wink, wink, he might be the Wallabies coach.
Again, like I said, there's so much history there and so many great players we know of that era we're talking about. To have that back in this competition, albeit it's not in North Sydney, but there's rusted-on fans. You just ask James Bracey. There's rusted-on fans that live in that area that love the Bears, and it's just great to see them back.
Yep. So they'll be able to negotiate with players from November 1, given that they'll enter the competition in 2027. Lockie, what do you think that does to the player market? It has an immediate boom.
I think they're probably already asking questions now. I just think that's just human nature. I mean, they need a head start.
Yeah.
We're talking it's not long. You know, they've got to build an administration, build a roster. Obviously, the first person they've got to get is coach.
Yeah.
But what it will do is it will inflate the market.
Yep.
Because they need to build from scratch. So they're going to have to pay some big numbers to get the first 2 or 3 signings, which will, you know, if it's a prop, if it's a halfback or a fullback that they're targeting, and they pay, you know, like over top dollar, then that's going to make everyone else worth more.
Yeah, and I think while we're all excited about it, the most excited are player managers. At the moment, they'll be enjoying this, throwing the fishing line out just to see what they can hook up. It's wonderful times ahead, but outstanding for the promotion of rugby league around the country.
Well, they're about to play poker. That's what they are.
Maybe Lockie Galvin's going to the Perth team. Maybe that's what that was all about. They got a head start. But Payne Haas is another one at the Broncos, Lockie. He's off contract at the end of next season. Does it make it more important now for the Broncos to lock him up with that end?
Look, I mean, whether the Bears were coming in or not, Payne was always going to be in demand.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's... It is what it is, and I guess every club will be faced with the same potential prospect. You know, I think what's important when you're getting a list together in a new team, and Wayne did it at the Dolphins, you need some experience and leadership to help, you know, those younger guys that you're going to bring in, because you're probably going to spend a lot of money on experience up here and then get, you know, a bit of youth, but you're going to probably struggle to get your depth in the middle because you spend so much money up here.
Yeah.
So there'll be interesting times, but, you know, like I said, if the Bears were in or out, Payne's always going to be in demand.
Yeah. That's it. And we've done up a mini list. Which players from Queensland clubs do you think might be targeted by the new Perth team? Herbie Farnworth comes on contract then. Ben Hunt, the ageless Ben Hunt. You never know what he's going to do. Keone Kinney, the Titans fullback. Even Jaden Campbell. You think the Titans eventually were going to have to offload one of those outside backs? Jackson Purdue from the Cowboys. Or I think Cobbo's an interesting one because he's off contract at the Broncos at the end of this season. So does he maybe do a 1-year extension at the Broncos and then go to the expansion club? So, or are we just speculating here? Well,
I think we are, but I was actually very impressed with his last performance.
Yeah, he's a fullback?
Yeah. I can remember we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago, and it was easy to become impressed by that one. Good performances always tempt interest from the clubs, and certainly that's going to be the case once again.
Yeah, if I'm a club that needs a fullback, I'm looking at Selwyn Cobbo. Like, I know he probably wants to stay at the Broncos, but don't talk his price up too much. Wait till he comes back.
Look, we've always said he's so much like GI.
Yeah,
he can play centres, got the big fend, big body, can play fullback, wing, and as he gets older and more experienced, and he gets the fitness levels, he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I think that's what captivated people because he's a different type of fullback to Reece Walsh. Reece Walsh is more pass, he'll create a try, whereas Cobbo he'll run over the top of you.
Well, the Broncos had to change the way they played the other night to suit Selwyn.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have Reece out there with the speed out wide, and it was effective. So, you know, when Reece comes back, it'll be interesting to see
how it all fits together. Yeah.
It's impossible to tell while we're sitting on the sideline or watching on TV, but Selwyn, to me, seems to be a pretty quiet sort of a guy. On the field, that may be completely wrong. He may be, real loud and assistance to those in front of him. But certainly, I get quite excited watching him at the back. I think he's capable of injecting himself wherever he wants to, and certainly there could be a bright future ahead.
Yeah, interesting to see what happens there with the Selwyn Cobbo situation at the Broncos. A point of our show that always creates a lot of interest is our Tab Big Call this week, one of our favourite segments, thanks to our good sponsor Tab. What have we got? Boys, I'm going to go with the Roosters Dolphins derby at Suncorp Stadium. They play for the Arthur Beetson medal. Yep. I'm going to tip Tom Gilbert to win the medal. I think a couple of weeks out from Origin, you could see how dirty he was when they lost to the Raiders on the weekend on the Sunday. So I think Tom Gilbert comes fired up Friday night footy on Channel 9 and wins the Arthur Beetson medal. What do you reckon, Wal?
I agree with you on the game, the Roosters-Dolphins one. There's always great interest, and the Beetson name always comes forward when that match will be played. It's going to be an absolute bumper. A real thrill. The Roosters good enough to be able to achieve success. Yeah, I think they are. And it hasn't been the greatest year for the Chooks. They've had some struggles along the way, but when you're looking at the name of Arthur Beetson in front of you as an enticement for winning, you cannot get a more perfect push forward.
Yeah, Roosters to win for what?
Yeah, I went with Purdue to get 3 last week. He got close. He got close.
You're getting pretty good. I reckon you're winning on this, Lockie. You've got most chips in the bank from all of us.
I'm taking a few risks.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with 3 out of the 4 Queensland teams to win.
Ooh.
Magic round, so not 4, but 3 out of the 4 to win. I'm not going to. Do I have to name them?
Well, I think you'd ask him to do that, Adam. It'd be just the right thing to do.
I think Cowboys, Broncos, and the Dolphins will win.
Yeah, and the other one's the Titans against the Dogs.
Didn't have to mention that.
No.
The Dogs to bounce back against the Titans, but yeah.
Well, the Dogs will be hard to knock.
Well, how about we go
Boy.
4 of the Queensland teams and we give Melbourne Storm. Melbourne Storm's another Queensland team.
Yeah. I'm just saying 3 out of the 4 Queensland
teams. There we go. Moving along a little bit more on the Broncos before we head off. Ezra Mam technically can play next week, well, straight after Magic Round. Do you expect him to come back into first grade straight away, or do you give him a few games in the Queensland Cup?
Oh, boy, I've been a bit...
I think it depends on a few things, Well. I reckon the first one is who's available.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What's the form like of the team?
Yep.
It was good last week. Let's see how they go this Sunday.
Yep.
And then the other one is, are you confident in Ezra's match fitness?
Yeah.
Because match fitness is a big thing.
Yep.
So I reckon Madge would be looking at all those things, but he can't really decide on that until he gets to Monday next week.
Yeah, okay.
And I think he enjoys teaching people lessons and making them want to make up for some of the errors that they may have made. So I guess he's the only one that could really answer that. But I understand what you say, Lockie, and it's hard to go against that.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure Ezra's probably thinking himself that if he has to go back to South and play a couple of weeks there just to get his match fitness and his timing going, he's not...
Perfect place to do it.
Yeah, I think he'd love to do that just to get back on the footy field.
Yeah, and South Logan at the moment have Anthony Milford playing for him. Imagine that. You go down to watch a game at Davies Park and Ezra Mam's rocking up next to Anthony Milford. Or Kobe Black is also the young half from the Broncos playing for the Magpies at the moment. But just on that, we're at Broncos training this morning. It looks as though Adam Reynolds is good to go. He trained strongly today. What were your guys' thoughts when you saw him go down with the shoulder, not once but twice in that game against the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I thought, he's gone here. And the way he was holding the shoulder actually got me to think, there's disaster afoot here.
Yeah.
This can't be good. I admired his input prior to that, but it looked like he had some troubled times ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Adam's, I guess... He's gotten used to playing with niggling injuries.
Yeah.
He's had a few over the years, but it doesn't... he scored that try. Was it the second try in the game?
I'm pretty sure, under the post,
Yeah, it was a 10 out of 10 from there on. So, playing with niggling injuries for Adam is not an issue. So, I think he's good to go.
Those kicks in the wet too were magnificent. You guys, as former playmakers, to put it on a dime in the wet on your winger's chest.
Yeah, that was fantastic, and you could hear it. I was sitting there in the middle of a group of people that were full of appreciation for that, and they were all talking about the brilliance, the display of the skill that was on, and certainly it was at its best at that stage, and to be able to do it, and I became used to seeing Lockie do it as well, the perfection that they put the spin on the ball so that they just skid across the line, and it's bad news ahead for your opposition, and celebrations all around with your teammates.
Well, I mean, I think Adam loves his golf. You're a golfer.
Yeah.
Is that what, just a lob wedge? What is that? Is it punching a 7-iron over? Like, if you were to...
Yeah, to Dean Mariner in the corner, Oh, Yeah, you probably go pitch and wedge there. Yeah.
But it's
short game isn't Adam Reynolds' strength on the golf course.
Isn't it?
I'll say that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll throw him under the bus there.
It is.
He actually hits it a long way for a small guy. I'll give him credit there.
Yeah, I was waiting. I thought you were going to pull out the 7-iron just short of the green and run it up on, leave it 2 or 3 feet from the pin.
Potentially, yeah. Depends what kind of shot you want to hit.
His short game on a footy field goes pretty good.
Oh, definitely.
How does yours go on a footy field?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Adam Reynolds, I see what you did there, Lockie.
No, but
Yeah.
All good. But
I'm a good golfer, but not nearly as good a golfer as he is football player, yeah.
Because those goal kickers and the guys that can get their kicks right on the footy field, they got a good feel, and they're normally pretty good at golf.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention that too, because JT, remember those big hooking kicks that he did with his conversions?
Yeah.
If you play golf with him, he hits a drive like
draw. Yeah,
big draw.
Yeah, right.
He calls it a draw, not a hook, but yeah, we'll give him a draw when he's playing up there at Rose Bay in Townsville, JT. Just finally on that one too. So the configuration of the spine when Mam comes back. So the talk was it'd be Mam, Reynolds and Hunt. Ben Hunt would move to hooker, Lockie. But the form of Billy Walters, they must be maybe second-guessing themselves with that because he's making it hard to drop him.
Yeah, Billy, I think Billy is explosive out of dummy half early. He creates it, and he's got the 40-20s. So got to give him credit. Like, you know, he was, demoted back to the bench by Madge, but he hasn't. He's remained positive, and he's been playing some really good footy. So, again, we're watching it, but we're not dissecting what's important to the team like the coach would be. So he'd be looking at all these players and going, well, what's the best option for my team?
Yeah. And his line speed's been really good too, coming out there defending for Billy Walters. Bit of sad news now. Talking about the Titans, gee whiz, weren't they awful while in that second half against the Cowboys? I think conceded 38 points in that second half against the Cowboys. Horrendous.
Yeah, having known Desi Hasler for so long, I was trying to imagine how he would have been feeling at the time. Obviously had good things, great things in mind for this season. On occasions, we've got to enjoy some things, but boy, certainly not that one. And I just can't imagine how he would have been reacting going to the dressing shed. So I know Fatty used to say, everyone thinks Desi's a really quiet guy, talks really softly and does that, but when he gets into the dressing room...
just ask that door at Brookvale.
The explosives have been lit, and it's do your best to stay out of his line of vision, because if you're in it, you're the one that's going to cop the spray.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think... they're 18-6 up, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I find that they just, once adversity goes against them, or something goes against them, there's some adversity there, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
They have periods where they're on top and they'll look like they're a top 8 team, and then when the momentum's gone against them and they're searching for answers, they look like a bottom 4 team. And at the moment, that's where I think they're sitting on the ladder. So it's a bit of a challenge for Des. I do think, no Kieran Foran out there probably accentuates that fact that they can't handle adversity. But, he can't be far away, but he's not going to be the miracle player that's going to solve it all for them.
Yeah, I think...
And I think it's quite interesting, Lockie, too, when they get into a position where they're looking pretty comfortable, their displays have been fairly good, they've scored a couple of tries. Sometimes you get the impression that they're almost out there to take unwanted chances, and the best thing that they could do was perhaps just play safe.
Yeah.
Put it in and make sure that the opposition, when they get the ball, it's right at the other end of the field. They're not out to desperately score another try. They've got to the front and they're performing quite well. But what is the selection of their game for the next couple of minutes? And it just looked like they've got into panic mode almost, despite them having the footy.
Yeah. The talk is Foran probably about 2 weeks away, not this week, but the week after. But, if they continue on this downward trajectory and miss the finals again, it's the pressures start to mount on Des, because, honestly, I don't think they've improved since getting rid of Justin Holbrook.
No.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's in a we're in a results-driven game, and is this Dez's third year or
second year? Yeah.
And there was a period last year where I thought they turned the corner, but they went back to their old ways at the back end of the season. And then, so yeah, look, I think as much as, you know, I think Des just wants to find some consistency. But if he can't find that, then yeah, I guess the pressure will only get, you know, stronger towards the back end of the year.
Yeah, to be honest, I probably thought they'd be a lot better than what they have. With Des in charge, and they've got guys up front, particularly in the forwards, that should be controlling, should be dominant, and should be almost impossible to stop, making good territory. What happens off the back of that, and what they do with the ball on the last tackle, you know, that's been a bit of an issue for them. But certainly, I thought that they would have been performing a hell of a lot better.
I think, you know, for a coach to experience halves to help you, because they pretty much take over a game day. They run the team out there. And look, you know, I know AJ is an experienced player, but at 6, not necessarily. Yeah. And then
Tom Weaver's filling in.
So I think when Foran comes back and JC's back, they're definitely going to help with the consistency. But at the moment, it's just tough going for Desi.
Yeah, and their defence has been pathetic. So that's now 4 weeks in a row they've conceded 30 or more points. Yeah. You can't win a game if you're doing that in the NRL. Moving along to Origin selection, well, before we wrap it up here, we'll move it to you instead of the maroon selector on the table.
You've obviously read what I've got down here.
I think just over 2 weeks to go until they have to finalise their team for game 1. How many names do you think are in Texter? How many names are in pencil? Or it's all in pencil because you don't know who's going to be sin-binned or suspended at the moment?
Yeah, I was going to say, as I've written down here, ask a selector. Yeah. They're the ones that can...
It's in bold too, yeah.
Very, very bold. But I think the coach will probably have come out with a classic reply to that. Each position in the team is up for grabs. So let's see how we go with that in motion.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because a lot of players were injured last year too, and it's almost like a transition period.
Particularly in the middle.
Yeah.
We were lacking in the middle, just in terms of size.
Yeah.
There was no Gilbert, no Tino.
Flegler was out, who'd played the previous year.
Flegler's still out.
Yeah.
There was one other. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But
Big Red wasn't playing that well last year either.
Again, you know, the twists and turns with the Origin just happen every week. So, and it'll happen in 80 minutes of footy, but it'll happen between now and when the team gets picked. So we just hope that as many Queenslanders that are out there playing, they stay fit and healthy.
Yeah. And if all thing goes to plan at the moment, that DC and Munster Grant is your 6, 7 and 9, can we find a role for Tom Dearden? Because he was Queensland's best player last year. He won, I think it's the Peter Jackson medal that you guys win for the player of the series. Can Tom Dearden transition to be that 14 role, you think, Well?
Yeah, I do. You know, and I don't think it's any secret. I'm a huge fan of his. Certainly, I don't think that it would be uncomfortable for him to be the 14. He'd be able to fill so many positions. He's already done it at club level, at hooker, at halfback, 5'8", and I think he played at one stage at fullback for the Cowboys. So he's quite capable of doing it. So if the opportunity is there for him and he's needed in that position, I think you know, the replacement would be made with full confidence. Yeah,
he's quite versatile. Lockie?
Oh, look, you know what you get with Tommy. I mean, you're saying with Ben Hunt.
Yeah.
But Tommy's just all effort, all heart. You know, I always think of that tackle he did on
Cobbo.
Yeah. Like that's just what epitomises Tom Dearden, and what Origin's about is that extra effort that is required. So, you know, whether he's in the team or not, if he's not in the 17, he'll be sitting somewhere. And, but he's just a great team guy to have in the environment.
And while I only answered half of the question there, Adam, Ben Hunt, he's been there, done that, and have a look at his performances. When he has donned the Queensland jersey, he's been in wonderful control. And I remember the game that he played at Suncorp, that's a couple of years ago, where he was in total control. He was spending a pile of time at dummy half and kicking to the corners after doing that. And that was as good a game as I've ever seen Ben Hunt play. It was remarkable, and it just sat in the back of the mind to say, well, if you need to play him in that position again, you know you can count on him after watching that performance.
Yeah. One thing I love about Tom Dearden, you watch a Cowboys game, anytime someone makes a break, Tom Dearden is the first player to pop up in support in the screen. So you'll see that blonde hair just flicker in the corner of the screen. He's the first one there, and that's what makes a Queensland State of Origin player. But one of the positions for conjecture last year was the back row. David Fifita was overlooked for the entire series. Is there anything to suggest in his form this year that he could be a chance for a recall?
Well, it doesn't help that the Titans aren't winning.
Yeah. And he's been coming off the bench.
Yeah, and, I think we know the talent that Dave has. It's, we talk about what an Origin player is, and, Dave is probably still learning exactly what that's about, and that's, the effort areas in the game that you need. He brings a lot with the footy. Defensively, I think that's probably his biggest challenge, is making sure that, if someone like Billy's watching him, that his movement in defence is, what Billy requires it, because he knows what it's required at Origin level, and I think Dave's capable, but it's just whether he wants it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to another selector, Gene Miles, about him. Was he a little bit too slow off the ground? Gino's reply was, well, he was certainly a lot quicker than you ever were off the ground. You were expecting other people to do all the work. The part is that we know just how powerful how he can be, and the drama that he can cause for opposition defence. It's just a matter now of convincing the selectors that he should be in the side, and that's a little bit of a tough task at the moment.
Well, big couple of weeks for him, really.
Yeah.
And all the back rowers in contention, Jeremiah and Nene, looks like he's got his act together at the Cowboys, scored a double on the weekend. Jaden Sewell was really strong for the Dragons at the start of this year. He played the opening 2 matches last year. Like, you don't know what you can do with Gilbert, put him on an edge maybe. Max Plath is there. Brendan Piakura has been in the squad previously. So there's at least there's depth.
There's a lot of options.
Yeah.
And I reckon the next 2 weeks, all those guys you just mentioned could make a statement in the next couple of weeks and, make it too hard for Billy to resist.
There we go. We look forward to seeing it. It all begins Magic Round this week. Friday night, the Dolphins tackle the Roosters. Sunday afternoon, rare Sunday Arvo game for the Broncos against the Panthers. But Thursday night, make sure you tune in. The defending champions in Women's State of Origin, Queensland Maroons at Suncorp Stadium, look to win Game 1 here in Brisbane. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.